At that time again, Mahamate, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said this to the Blessed One: Impermanence, impermanence. This is the discrimination of the philosophers, Blessed One. And you, too, declare in the canonical texts that all composite things are impermanent. To be subject to birth and destruction is the nature of things. But, Blessed One, is this right or wrong? And how many kinds of impermanency are there, Blessed One? Said the Blessed One: Mahamate, there are 8 kinds of impermanency, as discriminated by the philosophers, but not by me. What are the 8 kinds? 1. Some say that there is origination and then cessation. This is impermanency. That is to say, Mahamate, in the beginning there is something born which ceases to exist. This is impermanency. 2. Some explain impermanency as the changing of shape. 3. Some say form itself is impermanent. 4. Some regard impermanency to consist in the changing of form, saying that in a continuous, uninterrupted existence of all things there takes place a change in their natural flavor. For instance, milk going through a transformation turns into sour milk, and that such an invisible decomposition happens to all things. This is called impermanency. 5. Some imagine that there is an objective existence, which is called impermanency. 6. Some imagine that existence and non-existence, this is impermanency. 7. Some say that not being born is impermanency, because of all things being impermanent, and because of impermanency being inherent in them. Now, Mahamate, by impermanency that exists in existence and non-existence is meant that things made of the elements are by nature subject to destruction and have nothing in them one can take hold of, while the elements themselves are never set in motion. By impermanency that is no birth is meant that there is neither permanency nor impermanency, that in all things there is no dualistic evolution of being and non-being, and that nothing is seen to exist, even when they are examined into the last atom. This not seeing of anything is another name for no birth, and not for birth. This, Mahamate, is the nature of impermanency that is no birth, and, as this is not understood, all the philosophers cherish the view of impermanency that is based on birth. Further, Mahamate, by the conception of impermanency as objective existence is meant that there is a discrimination in the philosopher's own mind as to that which is not permanent and that which is not impermanent. What is the sense of this? It means that there is a thing called impermanency, which in itself is not subject to destruction, but by whose working there is the disappearance of all things. And if not for the impermanency, there will be no disappearance of all things. It is like a stick, or a stone, or like a hammer breaking other things to pieces, while itself remains unbroken. This is the philosopher's meaning. But as we actually see things about us, there is no such mutual differentiation, which compels us to say that here is impermanency the cause, and there is the disappearance of all things as the effect. There is no such differentiation of cause and effect, and we cannot say, here is impermanency as cause, and there is the effect. When there is thus no differentiation of cause and effect, all things are permanent, since no cause exists to render them otherwise. Mahamate, as to the disappearance of all things, there is a cause, but it is not in the understanding of the ignorant and simple-minded. When the cause is of a dissimilar nature, the same effect is not produced. In case it does, the impermanency of all things is an example of dissimilar effect, and there is no distinction between cause and effect. But the distinction between cause and effect is observed in them. If there is an objective existence to be known as impermanence, it will be characterized with the nature of an effect-producing cause, and there will be one entity contained in all things. When the notion is cherished of a cause producing effect, this means that impermanence, the cause, is impermanent, because it partakes of the nature of the effect, which is impermanent. All things, then, are not to be regarded as impermanent, but as permanent. If impermanency, as the cause, resides within all things, it will come under the three divisions of time. It passes away together with things past. Its future is not yet here, as things of the future are still unborn. In the present, it breaks up together with things of the present. Form, or matter, results from the combination and variation of the elements. As the primary elements and the secondary elements are neither different nor not different, they are by nature not subject to destruction, because according to the philosophers, the elements are indestructible. But, Mahamate, it is an established fact that the entire triple world, with its elements, primary and secondary, is born, abides, and disappears. How do the philosophers conceive a separate existence of impermanency, which is independent of the elements primary and secondary, while the elements themselves are neither set in motion nor destroyed, because they cling to the notion of self-nature as eternally unchangeable? The conception of impermanency as existing in the first origination, which ceases to continue, is not tenable for three reasons. The elements cannot produce one another, because each has its self-nature different from the others. Each individual one cannot produce itself, because there is no differentiation in it. The mutually separated origination of the elements is impossible, because there is no correspondence between the two. Hence, the conclusion that the conception of origination impermanency is untenable. By the conception of impermanency in consideration of changes taking place in external form is meant that the elements primary and secondary are not subject to dissolution. What is known as dissolution, Mahamate, even when closely examined until atoms are reached, is not the destruction of the elements primary and secondary, but of their external forms, whereby the elements assume different appearances as short or long. But, in fact, nothing is destroyed in the elemental atoms. What is seen as ceased to exist is the external formation of the elements. This view is cherished by the Samkhya school. By the impermanency of external shapes is meant the impermanency of form, or rupa. What is impermanent is thus the external shape, and not the elements. If the elements themselves are impermanent, all our everyday experiences come to naught. This is cherishing the view of the Lokatika, according to which all things are reducible to mere words, because their self-nature is never seen as born. By the impermanency of changes is meant the changing of forms, or rupa, and not the changing of the elements themselves, as is seen in various ornamental articles of gold, which assume various forms. While there is no disappearance in the nature of gold, the ornamental articles variously change in form. These and other views of impermanency as changes are discriminated variously by the philosophers, as is here described. Fire may burn all the elements, but their self-nature can never be burned. When each goes asunder by itself, there is the destruction of what constitutes the elements, primary and secondary. However, Mahamate, I am neither for permanency nor for impermanency. Why? For these reasons. External objects are not admitted. The triple world is taught as not being anything else but the mind itself. Multiplicities of external existences are not accepted. There is no arising of the elements, nor their disappearance, nor their continuation, nor their differentiation. There are no such things as the elements primary and secondary. Because of discrimination, there evolve the dualistic indications of perceived and perceiving. When it is recognized that because of discrimination there is a duality, the discussion concerning the existence and non-existence of the external world ceases, because mind only is understood. Discrimination rises from discriminating a world of effect-producing works. No discrimination takes place when this world is not recognized. Then a man ceases to cherish the discrimination of existence and non-existence, which rises out of his own mind. He sees that things, either of this world, or of a higher world, or of the highest, are not to be described as permanent or impermanent, because he does not understand the truth that there is nothing in the world but that which is seen of the mind itself. As the meaning of discrimination is not understood by all the philosophers who have fallen into wrong ideas of dualism and who are people of no spiritual attainment, impermanency comes up to them as a subject for discussion. Mahamate, the triple aspect of all things, as distinguished as of this world, of a higher world, and of the highest, is the outcome of word discrimination. But this is not understood by the ignorant and simple-minded. So it is said. By the deluded philosophers, the notion of impermanency is discriminated as origination-cessation, as transformation of external forms, as an independent existence as form. There is no destruction of things. The elements abide forever as regards their self-essence. Immersed in varieties of views, the philosophers discriminate impermanency. To these philosophers there is no destruction, no birth. The elements are permanent as regards their self-essence. Whoever discriminates impermanency? This is the position of the philosophers. According to the Buddha, there is nothing in the world but the mind itself, and all that is of duality has its rise from the mind, and is seen as perceived and perceiving. An ego soul and what belongs to it, they exist not. The abode and realm of Brahma, etc., I declare all to be of mind only. Outside mind only, Brahma, etc., are not attainable. Here ends the third chapter on impermanency in the Lankavatara Mahayana Sutra.